Is everyone familiar with the Pareto principle, also known as the 20-80 rule? If you're not familiar with it, let me give you a brief explanation of it. First of all, the principle is named after an Italian sociologist and economist, Vilfredo Pareto. One day he was doing research and he discovered that 20% of the population owned approximately 80% of the land in Italy. And this interested him because this ratio of 20-80 seemed to be a natural phenomena that applies across a wide spectrum. As an example, it applies to task. 20% of the tasks on your to-do list will produce 80% of your results. It applies to time. 20% of your time will produce 80% of your overall productivity. It applies to businesses. 20% of a store's products will bring in 80% of their profit. It applies to reading. 20% of a book contains 80% of the most important content. That's why you can get Cliff Notes. It applies to donations. 20% of the donors will give 80% of the money. And I could go on and on and on. But that, my friend, is the Pareto principle, also known as the 20-80 rule. Sometimes you hear people refer to it as the 80-20 rule. It doesn't matter. You're just reversing the way you say it. All right? But the ratio is still the same. It is a natural phenomena that applies across a wide spectrum. Now, listen to this because this is very, very important. The Pareto principle even applies to biblical principles. Yeah. Certain principles produce greater results than others. Let me say that again because it's very, very important. And that's the whole premise of this series. Certain principles produce greater results than others. And guess what? Those principles that produce greater results fall into the 20% category. The category that produces greater results. How much greater, you ask? About 80% greater. Yeah. It's the Pareto principle. Now, if I know what those principles are, I can focus on them and change my life dramatically. In other words, if I know which marriage principles produce the greatest results, I can focus on those principles and I'll see tremendous results in my marriage. Remember, 20% of the marriage principles in the Bible will produce greater results, about 80% greater. In fact, let me go a little bit further. You need to understand what I'm saying. Let's suppose that you're going to get married, and this is your wedding day right here. And what you really want in life is you want a great marriage. So you're going to start off right, and you're going to actually go to premarital counseling with Bobby Musgrove. And the reason you're going to do that is because they told you when you went down there to buy your marriage license, it's cheaper if you get premarital counseling. And they don't want to save money. Now, you don't really expect to learn anything. You're just hoping that you can meet the guy, he'll say that he counseled you, and you can go get the license, right? But Bobby's not that way. So what Bobby does, and this is the wedding date, is he starts giving you all of these biblical principles. And he says, if you'll follow these biblical principles, you can have a great marriage. And when he goes through these principles, you find out there's about 30 principles. And you think, oh my gosh, I've got to do these 30 principles. I've got to actually carry them out to have a great marriage. And then you come to Pastor Allen. And Pastor Allen says, I'm going to give you a cheat sheet. About 20% of these principles will take you 80% of the way to a great marriage. And so he gives you the 30 principles. I come in and I give you 20%. What's 20% of 30? Anyone know? About 6. Yeah, 10% is 3. 20% is 6. 30% is 9. 40% is 12. 50%, which is half, is 15. But I tell you, you just need to know 6 principles. And if you know these 6 principles and you apply them, you can get up to 80% of the way to a great marriage. In fact, you start off with these 6 principles, you'll have a good marriage from the get-go. Now, it doesn't mean it'll give you a great marriage. Why? Because there's 24 other principles that will take you the rest of the way. But I want to get you started because here's what I know. Most of you won't learn the 6. And so you'll start focusing on what your cousin Bubba told you, or your mama told you, or your daddy told you. And they might be biblical principles, but if they're not the 6 principles, guess what? You got these 24 principles, and they take you 20% of the way to a great marriage. But you're not doing the 6 most important. So guess what? You get divorced. Yeah. And you don't understand it because your principles that you were applying to your marriage came right from the Bible. The problem is they weren't the most important principles. Do you get what I'm saying? This is why the Pareto principle is so important.